You're definitely going to want to watch this entire interview, and it's going to leave you wanting more. I'm very, very confident of that. I'm thrilled to be joined by writer, director, multiple award, Emmy-winning Chris Nolan. And before I get that, I want to remind everybody that this speaker is part of a speaker series hosted by James Madison University School of Professional and Continuing Education. We're in fall 2022. We are focused on thriving in the new normal, what leaders should know to confidently lead innovation in hybrid and remote teams. We're kind of through peak COVID, I'd say, but certainly not adjusting and adapting to everything that COVID has caused. And there may be a name or a word or a concept for what it is we're going through. And that's what today's session is all about. How do we create a mental frame for what it is that we're facing, even maybe pre-COVID in the world today? There's a movie called It's VUCA, VUCA, and we have the director and writer of that movie here. He's going to share what VUCA is, show how we can use that framework to go from negative VUCA to positive VUCA, and talk about a coaching program to give you practical tools that you could jump into if you want with him and his trainers to tackle this world that we're in. So if you haven't signed up for the email, if you sign up on the email, you will get all of the speakers into your inbox. You'll also get all the listener thank you gifts and the bonuses that are also coming up later in the episode. So Chris Nolan is a multiple Emmy Award-winning director, creative director, marketing strategist, branding story expert, writer, songwriter, playwright, and author. He brings 25 years of branding, writing, directing, and production experience in both advertising and entertainment to 90,000 feet. 90,000 feet is his company. And I will say that if you go to itsvuca.com, you'll be able to see this specific film. But as a way of introduction, Chris, what else would you like our watchers and listeners to know before we jump into this?
Well, that was a great introduction. Thank you, Kai. It's an honor to be here and be part of the James Madison program. I think you've said it. I mean, we can go towards the end. We can talk more about the program and what we're doing and the usual Instagram and Facebook and Twitter and YouTube links and all that. It's VUCA is the main area to go to. We also have a Facebook. VUCA Max is what we call the program, coaching program. But you brought up a very interesting thing, which is where are we now? And we'll talk about why we call it VUCA Max, okay? Because the World Economic Forum just did a survey of how are things after COVID. Well, issues have intensified. They've accelerated exponentially. There's more issues now, and there's more mental stress now than there has ever been. There's more polarization. There's more geopolitical problems. Climate change, as we've seen every day, is accelerating. And so if you think we're out of the never normal, well, we're going to show you some slides to show you that are really going to blow your mind.
And I'm so excited for this because I love the big thinking and all the big framing, and that's part of my leadership style is sense making, meaning making. I like to find frameworks to help myself and people around me to get on the same page from language and what is it that we're dealing with. And I want to make sure on the front end that if you're watching this because you're a manager on a small team, or you're running a small nonprofit, or you're CEO of a big company, this episode in the series is really meant to give you some language, first and foremost, around how normal our abnormal is, if I can say it that way. And
well put.
Let's start with what is VUCA? Why did you make a video about it? And I'm sure some people here have never heard of it before.
Well, yeah. So VUCA aptly explained the conditions, the environment of the later 20th and early 21st century. As a result of Moore's law, the impact of technology, every 18 months, technology basically doubled its effectiveness. And so VUCA was something that the War College came up with that said, well, why are wars so hard to win, right? It's because a small team with satellites and computers and caves and cell phones can now outsmart an army, right? And so this quickly became something that the battlefield and the boardroom adapted as it was really a rethinking of military and business leadership. But around 2020,
Can we go through the terms for people if they haven't heard of it?
sorry.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
So the negative side of VUCA is volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. Okay.
Right. Volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. So when we say we're facing a VUCA world, we're saying we're facing a scenario and context that has all of these things interrelated. It's volatile, it's complex, it's uncertain. I did that in the wrong order. And it's ambiguous.
And it's external. Okay, that's a big thing. In other words, think about the world today. Okay, what are the things that we all deal with? Okay, what are the biggest impacts? Every coach will say complexity, uncertainty, and chaos, right? Those are really the big three. And as you said the right thing, Kai, it's really a framework, right? You don't want to get too hung up on it. You just want to understand really those three words, okay? Now, those are the external. Now, there is a positive side of VUCA, right? Which is, and I think there's another distinction you can make. So the negative side is technological impacts being caused by the convergence and the doubling of technology every 18 months. This is what's causing the disruption. This is what's causing the rapid change. There's another side of it, which is basically the human side of it. What counters those negative technological sides? And this is a big issue today, okay? What are the human algorithms that counter the technological algorithms? And those are vision, understanding, clarity, and adaptability. Now, those are just word salad, unless you start to really put, what does that really mean? Which is what our program does. Okay.
So yeah, and just to frame this, just to make sure people are, if you're hearing this for the first time, it's a lot to take in at once. So encourage you to watch the movie, which is available on Amazon Prime and many other locations. But I kind of saw the positive VUCA, those words that you just said, as the counter and something that an individual leader can really grab onto as what their opportunity / responsibility is, and sort of the guiding light is of how to navigate being in this negative VUCA world. So when you're facing a volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous scenario, like all of a sudden we're all working from home or hybrid, or our markets have totally been disrupted, the supply chain's disrupted. All of a sudden we're trying to figure out Zoom and Microsoft Teams and all these sorts of things. Okay, it's one thing to know that that's normal and it's something to expect more of, but then there's another, how do we deal with it? Oh, well, provide vision. Was that, wait, yeah.
Vision, understanding, clarity, and adaptability. Yeah. It does, that is accurate, Kai.
Yeah.
But the movie takes us into another dimension. Okay. In other words, that concept is from 1987. And it's been very, very apt for a long time, for 3 decades. Unfortunately, yesterday's VUCA is now max. It's massive, it's accelerating, and it's exponential. It's what we call VUCA MAX. It's intensified beyond the original concept. We're now all swimming in VUCA MAX. It brings both colossal threats and colossal opportunities. Maybe we should go into the share screen thing now, and we'll just get what's the difference between VUCA, which has kind of been out there a while, and VUCA MAX, which is where we are now and where we're headed. Okay.
Yeah. And as you share the screen, I'll just highlight that it sounds like to me what you're saying is, if anybody feels this idea of I've never dealt with this before, they're right.
They're right. And we have solutions for them.
Yeah.
Because what happens in it, and we're going to go into this later on, and it's a lot of, I would say a lot of our program is based on neuroscience and 3.5 years of research. So a lot of what we're going to realize is that maybe I'll just say this now before we look at this. We have a linear bias. Okay. For 2 million years, we've been evolving linearly. In other words, something is 30 feet away. Let me share this and we'll go into that real quick.
Sure.
Okay.
And I'll just read this on the itsvuca.com as you're sharing. And it says, it's more than a movie. It's VUCA is more than a movie. It's a movement. And this is what we're getting into here. It
Exactly.
Says, the future is moving faster than we think. And as we experienced in 2020, the world is unprepared for it. Our mission, your mission, is to transform the world from negative VUCA to positive VUCA, and to flip the script on the volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity, and empower humankind with vision, understanding, clarity, and adaptability. To inspire and uplift individuals, companies, and institutions with new knowledge, skill sets, mindsets, and wisdom that will help them lead and thrive in chaos, crisis, and confusion. And ultimately to bring hope, optimism, well-being, and unimaginable abundance to the entire planet. What more could you want from an interview on YouTube than to get all of that? And you're going to get just a taste of it here.
That was beautiful, Kai. Thank you. The thing that's really interesting about this is that, and Nassim Taleb, we have a huge section on anti-fragility, which we could do another segment on. Resilience, about how we've been resilient in the past and how we need to be resilient. That's changed. Okay, can't get into that. This gets a whole nother subject. We have one tool today we can get through. But basically, this is the key. In the next 10 years, we'll see 100 years of progress. And we won't experience 100 years of progress in the 21st century. It'll be more like 20,000 years. And the reason is once again, exponential growth of technology. You can see it with the Internet of Things, with 3D, with nanotechnology, with how much things are changing and being disrupted, how retail has been completely disrupted, how healthcare disrupted. This is the curve. Now, this is where your audience really has to lock into this, because when you talk about VUCA, you're talking about early 21st century. VUCA was moving at every 18 months pace, right? Well, now look at this hockey stick. Okay, we're at 4 right now. At 1 is 2020. So this is how fast things are going to start moving here now. It's a doubling exponentially. And so here's the problem we have. We have a problem, leaders, people, why we go numb, why we get stuck, why we get overwhelmed, is that we have a linear bias to this concept. We become a stranger to ourselves 2 to 3 years ahead of time. Okay, in other words, if we try to think ahead, we go, I can't imagine myself maybe more than a year ahead, right? Because we really still have an agrarian mindset about how we view the future. Okay, it's a linear bias. Our grandfather was linear and local, or great-great-grandfather. Everything was a walk away, right? You could walk to work, right? Now the complexity is so great. Everything is exponential and global. In a nanosecond, we know what's going on, and it's overwhelming. The information is too much for our brains to handle, literally too much for our brains to handle. So what does this mean? So here's where we are. 30 feet linearly is the saber-toothed tiger was 30 feet away. I knew whether to run, to flee, to hide, or to fight, right? Exponential, the doubling in 30 steps we're at the moon. Okay, that's the difference. So what does that mean for people, right? It means that they can't gauge the speed of change. There's a big gap there. Okay, so we can go back to our screens now, stopping the share.
Okay.
And we'll talk more now about what's the repercussions of this, okay? What's the repercussions of this fork in the road moment that we have, right? We already said 2022 World Economic Forum and said the threats are exponentially increasing since COVID. So if you're feeling like, hey, this never normal is not really changing, right? I mean, it's why people they're pessimistic about the future. You know, it's impossible to sense what's coming next. It's uncharted territory for humanity, right?
Yeah, I'm empathizing with the people might be watching this that, are just trying to make it work.
Oh, for sure.
And just trying to run their business, their restaurant, their consulting company, their higher ed continuing ed unit, or, like, and they might feel it.
You've hit the nail on the head, because what is happening now is that businesses are just trying to stay afloat. Leaders are just trying to keep the company going. People are just trying to get through the day. They're stuck. They're maybe just trying to get out of bed, right? And they're actually too focused on the external world. They're actually, because we're bombarded by technology, we're bombarded by this VUCA MAX world, we're becoming victims more than creators. Now you're going to get into your topic here, right? Of creativity. We're becoming victors versus creators. You cannot be a creator in a victim mode, okay? Because what happens is that, I guess we can get into a little neuroscience right now, is that at one time, when we were our survival modes, there was a predator out there, right? Volatile change. Now it's ambiguous news, right? And we'll talk about how that affects leaders in a moment. It's very, 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 it's very, very connected. Anyway, it's a maladaptive way to live, because it makes your brain very incoherent. It actually shuts off your prefrontal cortex, so you can't be creative. You're in a hypervigilant state, and it takes, as you were saying, Kai, a tremendous amount of energy, and it makes you more fatigued. You have emotional disconnection. You retreat into hopelessness. You get apathetic. You get numb, right? And it's what's happening all over the world. And I'll explain this neuroscience-wise in a second. What's causing this, right?
Yeah, I'm trying to think how I experience it, and that's just the shutdown, or where do I get paralyzed? Where do I not move forward? And it comes from doubting what the right solution is sometimes, and I think if people were attracted to a speaker series that says how to confidently lead innovation in hybrid and remote teams, they're wanting silver bullets, and they're wanting, oh, this is the right way to do it. And it's all contextual, right? And if I'm through my PhD program here in leadership studies, the classwork of it and the comprehensive exam, I now get to do a dissertation. And if there's one takeaway from all the classwork and leadership studies and organizational sciences, it depends, which is a very not satisfying answer.
No, that's great, because you've hit on something really important. So we talked about Moore's law, the doubling of technology every 18 months, and how that's made your phone 1,000,000 times smaller and 1,000 times smarter than the Apollo program's computer that put a man on the moon, right? So in 10 to 20 years, that computing power is going to be unimaginable, right? But we're not updating our operating systems. Our phones update automatically, right? Every 2 years, you wouldn't be with a 5-year-old phone, but people haven't upgraded their operating systems, or they don't understand their algorithms for decades. We need to continually upgrade our human algorithms, right? And the reason for that is, and we really have to get a handle on this, is because we have to understand that our subconscious, what you're talking about, why I go into it, why do I have doubt? Everybody's different. Everybody has their own reasons, okay? There's no one size fits all. But this is a fact. 95% of who we are is a set of memorized behaviors, emotional reactions, beliefs, and perceptions, 95%. So we're only working with 5%, right? 75% we have the same of the time we have the same thought, or 90%, I think, every single day, right? So
yeah, and let me just
go ahead.
highlight that a little bit. And I think people experience that at the organizational level through COVID, where what you're saying is that our brain can't be so intentionally focused on every single thing we do all day long. We have to routinize, make things routines and make things sort of like if A, then B, and start reacting to the world that way so that our brain can be freed up to be focused on the next strategic thing or the new threat or the new opportunity. And all of a sudden, both on the individual level, but also at the organizational level, when all of a sudden all these routines had to do with, hey, we're in the office together and this is how things work and this is how we reach our market, and no, we don't need to have a takeout window or have a mask policy or deal with the political fight that became having a mask policy or not. All of a sudden, all these basic things that had been routinized were part of that 95%. All of a sudden were thrown in front of us as leaders and as people of teams to just get through the normal operating of a day. And I can just really see that's part of what happened here, is these things that we thought that we had decided already, that were part of these routines, all of a sudden required complete rethinking again. And I could see that really being tiresome and overwhelming. And it's just focused on the day-to-day processes. It's not even yet talking about the more strategic directions for organizations and companies and teams.
Well, you're right. We have two levels of our VUCA MAX program. One is called +1s and -1s, which is based, on Maslow. You're either going +1 or -1, and it's a macro level of dealing with things. Okay. But there's also another level to the program, which is macro, which is that you have to have bigger ideas, moonshot ideas in VUCA. You actually have to think very, very differently. One of the things that you're speaking to is, and this is, like I said, it's different for everybody, but in the VUCA MAX world, we can go more unconscious. Okay. We have to be more conscious of certain things. Now, let me explain one thing that maybe you can weigh in on. So it's important to understand that what does stress do? Okay, what stress is based when we can't control things. Okay, when things are unpredictable, stress increases, and it actually increases the threats, the fight or flight system. And it puts us more out of control, because once your prefrontal cortex is disengaged and your fight or flight system is engaged, you're in security, you're not in decision-making mode. But VUCA MAX severely disrupts three core wants. We have three core wants: control, security, and approval. And we're going to talk about a tool here in a second called the VUCA MAX line tool. When we're below the line, and you're talking about that doubt stage, or the stress stage, or the confused stage, or the overwhelmed stage, you're scared of losing one of those big core wants. This is really important in leadership, because control and security are huge in leadership. And it's a natural tendency, Kai, to scan the world for threat, to be reactive. So listen to this. Most of us in VUCA MAX are below the line 90% of the time. We're unconscious. Unconscious 90% of the time, So that's when we were confronted by a new fear, a new stress, and immediately can trigger reactionary behaviors. It's a default mode for us, right? So what you're talking about here, and it happened in COVID in a very erratic way, is we had more of a conscious awareness of where we were. And you were talking about we were more aware of the negative cues, so to speak, in our lives, the threats, the stresses, when we felt contracted, when we felt overwhelmed. We realized that our capacity to focus and our decision making and to be creative were being limited. Now, this is really important. This is a really, really important part of the VUCA MAX program. It has to do with your topic about innovation. Below the line is a lack mode. You're in lack. You're not unlimited. You do not see unlimited potential. You are not in an expanded awareness. You are not in what we call higher consciousness, vertical learning, creativity, intuition, empathy, wisdom, collaboration. You can really see how this impacts leadership. If you're below the line, you're out of it. All of that's out the window. And as you were just saying, you're probably frozen because your body is being pumped with stress neuropeptides. Okay? And you're in hyperarousal. You're in acute stress response, right? And you do not have what we call it forward motion. Now, how many times have we had leaders go, I just can't seem to have forward motion. I just take care of what's today, right? Because it takes a lot of energy to have forward motion, right? A lot of energy and courage and risk and play. Now, a lot of this, we'll show you the tool in a second here. Maybe we should do that now.
Yeah, and I guess on the positive VUCA, the thing that I really honed in on was the word agile or adaptability.
Adaptability.
And, one of the agile principles when you take it into an agile project management context and the Agile Manifesto, which was how the software development world changed just to adapt to changing customer needs and that sort of thing, is you can redo it. Things are iterative. And I think that concept for leaders that feel like they're waiting for the right solution to commit to in the long term, if you have an agile mindset, that relaxes itself a little bit.
Growth mindset.
Yep. You're going to try something.
It's all about that.
Yep. Try it. Be open to the feedback. See feedback as useful information. Interpret that back. So how does that show up in what we're talking about? Well, if you're part of the human resources department and you're trying to figure out how to set up HR policies, try some things out. Take an experimental approach to this, an adaptive approach, an agile approach, and a learning approach to it, and be open about that and say that, hey, we're learning this together. We will change this, but we're going to change it based on your input and what we experience. And that's a much different and empowering framework. And is that what you would describe as above the line, looking at things?
Well, I would describe it. Yes, I would describe it as something else. I mean, we built this program from the ground up, basically, because we realized all these situations with HR. I mean, they're all interrelated because they're all new ideas. I mean, when you're talking about HR and you're talking about dealing with people, you really are talking about not being, because what you're talking about with doubt and all that, that's fragility. Okay, fragility in the VUCA environment, as Nassim Taleb said, is a penalty. You'll lose. It's a losing. The weights are down. It's a loss situation. So if you're in doubt, if you're in worry, if you're in lack, if you're powerless, if you're feeling pessimistic, all of those traits will come back to bite you later on, because you'll be disrupted somehow, because this is what's going on. If you're just responsive, right, which is where he says, well, I'm resilient. I mean, I'm just resilient. Well, that's a bounce back mode. Okay, bounce back is I'm resilient. I'm like a tennis ball. I can bounce back. But anti-fragility is about, as you said, embracing change, growing, very Carol Dweck, very growth versus fixed mindset, and a lot of it has to do with you know how she came up with fix versus growth? You know that story where it was kids, 10-year-old kids. She realized that they like to experiment, right? They were like, you give them new things. They said, yeah, this is great. This is great. Let's embrace change. Let's embrace this. Let's do that. Let's try this. Let's risk this experiment. Why? Because they're more into play, right? And your thing is innovation, right? So you have to get out of that fixed mindset to get into those expanded, synchronicities and opportunities that come in that environment. And that's an anti-fragile concept. So as you're saying, it's even being above and below the line is really just a moment to moment situation where you're realizing that, neuroscience wise, I am unconscious. Seriously, I'm unconscious. And being unconscious is a penalty area for me. Let's show you the tool and we'll just get into this and show you how this works. And maybe you'll see your area here of doubt, which you probably will. Hang on, let me get this here.
That sounds great. And I'll just point out that the first interview in this series was with Maureen Metcalf, who's the founder and CEO of the Innovative Leadership Institute. Yeah. And one of her big things is your beingness, as a leader, how are you being? What is that mindset? And
exactly.
So if you haven't seen that interview and you're watching this, go find Maureen's interview. And it's the first one in the series. And it just reiterates really how you're being, the mindset you're in, and your mindfulness about your mindfulness even is a good starting point here.
It really is, because it's just very, very important for us to understand how much of our, because as you said with leaders, I mean, you're not that you're into a routine or people are into a routine, but they are a lot of times just making it through the day, putting out fires, I mean, and I'll tell you a story of directing, how I've used this tool and how it's been apropos for me. But basically, I'll take you through the tool first. So you actually just say, where am I? Okay. And I'll show you the macro part of this tool. This is the micro part. Where am I at any point in time? Am I dealing with a past behavior? Here's what a leader does. So we talked about control and security. So when you're in a threat like mode, evolutionary wise, it was a predator or some natural disaster or whatever. But you can, in your mind, still be in a threat when somebody challenges you, right? They can challenge your control. They can challenge your, and what happens is you double down in environments. You double down on your assumptions. You double down on being right. You double down on having more control. And the problem is that in a VUCA world, and Bob Johansen said this in the film, Bob Johansen's a renowned futurist. In a VUCA world, certainty is punished. It's impossible to be certain. But a lot of leaders want to have that certainty, right? That's actually below the line.
So let me just brainstorm some ways this shows up in this threat of hybrid and remote working environments.
Yeah, go ahead.
Like if people are signed up for this speaker series, they're like, I'm looking for some solutions about how to better manage hybrid and remote teams environments, because it's a change. Yeah. It's a change. It's different. And the certainty could show up as everybody's going to be back in the office starting on this date, or everybody's working remote. And it can show up as though there's these dictates in policy, or that the leader is responsible to make those things through knowing it's the right thing to do, by being certain that it's the best way to serve the organization. And that's a false premise.
It is. It's a false premise because you're not, you saw there's something in the film called the OODA loop, right? Based on we're kind of hopping around here, but on John Boyd, who was, they call him 42nd Boyd because he was able to shoot down an opponent in 40 seconds, right? And he was so successful because they call it the OODA loop because it was about observe, orient, decide, act. Orientation was the most important part. And orientation, and why was he so successful? He was so successful because he didn't, what happens a lot of times is you try to accept the world as you want it to be, right? I've taken all this training. I have all these skills. I've been a leader for 30 years. I have a deep river of thinking, right? I know this stuff. Unfortunately, you know, that's what gets you shot down in a plane because you're not orienting yourself to new stuff, right? You're in a too deep river of thinking, right? And this happens when you ignore feedback, right? Or, you know, you persist in the fact that there's an adversity out there and you're not embracing change. You're not embracing the unknown, right? It's that fixed mindset. And a lot of it is based on, unfortunately, neuroscience. You're capitulating to your unconscious, right?
So let's walk through your tool with this
I'm gonna do that
scenario
right now, yeah.
of a
So I'm going to go to the overview because you're kind of on the overview. Can you see this?
Yep.
All right.
Yeah, if you want to maximize your,
Let me see if I can. Maybe I can make this the full screen for now. I may have to go back to it in a second here. So we'll do that for now. And
I guess what I'd like to propose is maybe, let's say we're talking to a leader or a leadership team that is trying to figure out what's the right policy about people being in and out of the office. And there's disagreements in the office. They think some people prefer one way or another, and they feel the weight on their shoulders of coming up with the right way. How can this tool help that individual or that team?
Well, once again, you're talking about for the topic wise, we're trying to say, how do we make them participate more, right? How do we make them more innovative? How do we make them creative? How can we confidently move them forward, right? So we have to understand that in the moment, leaders, and most leaders are in this survival mode, and a lot of people are in this survival mode. So you have to understand, and you can see how, if with this big slide here, how uncertainty is connected to doubt, judgment, separation, frustration, anger. So you have to realize that if I'm in doubt and worry, what am I not connecting to, right? Well, if I'm in doubt and worry and then I'm separation, maybe I'm not connecting to empathy. I'm separated, right? All of these areas, if I'm in fear and anxiety and stress, I have to realize, I have to flip the script on that. These are unconscious states. Fear, anxiety, and stress is unconscious. And the thing that the tool we'll go back to in a second is that choice is my destiny. Maslow said, Maslow was all about having a choice. And of course, Viktor Frankl, when he was in, he was in a concentration camp, the only thing he had was choice. So the ultimate thing when you're talking about agility and adaptability is choice. So you want to say, I'm in fear, anxiety, and stress. Choice is my destiny. What do I need to do? I need to say, okay, I need to re-engage. My amygdala's taken over. I need to re-engage my prefrontal cortex. This is the positive side of things. And I need to have an expanded awareness. I need to embrace someone's feedback. I need to embrace change. I need to embrace unlimited potential instead of a lack mode. What this does is, now you're talking about a team. I think that's where we started. It takes the team out of powerlessness to powerful. It takes them out of fragility to anti-fragility. It puts them into forward motion. They see a field of possibilities. Now, we'll show that triangle we looked at. What we're talking about here is lifting people into higher states of vertical consciousness. Okay. We've heard about vertical learning, right? Focus, flow. You cannot focus when you're in fear, anxiety, and stress because, as you said, you're distracted. If you're in unworthiness, or you're in blame, or you're living in past emotions, or if you have destructive thinking, that's the volatility of your mind. The complexity is where you get overwhelmed, you get stuck, you have mistakes, you make poor decisions. Gossip is also part of this, right? So, and this is all the stuff this is in the moment stuff. You really want to do this when you're in the moment. Like if you feel that I've been doubt and worry, you're below the line. You have to make a conscious choice to get above the line. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and the way that I've gone through a training that says choose your way of being first, because your way of being has available sets of actions connected to it. So
well, but choose your way of being comes actually after you first, because we want people to feel these emotions. You want people to understand their unconscious thoughts that are coming up. Like when you're stressed out, right? You got to say, once again, up 95% of me is, and Kai, this is why it's different. I don't know your psychology, how you grew up, what your parents said to you, what people said to you in class, how whatever happened. But this is all part of your shadow. Your shadow, as we knew with Jung, completely affects your creativity. But this helps a little bit. At least this is saying, I'm triggering something that's in my past. It's a past stress, a past trauma, a past behavior. And know how we say it? See that how the top says the future? The bottom says the past.
Yeah. You're
literally going from the past. The VUCA MAX line is the present, and you're putting yourself into a vision of the future. It's a very, very powerful tool. We want you to understand the negative cues. And once you, and this is really for coaches and HR departments, this big thing. Let's go back to the actual tool here, because for just a person, there's 4 steps. In other words, we want this to be on a 3x5 card for somebody, right? Because that big map, it's a great map, but we really want to say, I'm feeling something. You said you felt doubt. Where am I? I'm feeling doubt. You want to bring conscious awareness. That's a past behavior. Center yourself. Say, okay, I'm below the VUCA MAX line. You're going to literally step out of your past self now and do what's called a 60-second lifesaver. You take a deep 2-to-1 breaths. That's twice in the exhale, double the length on your exhale. That deep down regulates the volume of your stress, turns down the doubt. It actually takes you from the sympathetic to the parasympathetic system. So you're switching your amygdala to your prefrontal cortex. You're switching from survivor to creator, right? Just that fast in 60 seconds. And then you say, choice is my destiny. So you're activating, you're freeing up your prefrontal cortex. You're choosing the inner context. Again, remember we talked about VUCA as the external world, perceiving how you perceive the external content in circumstances. So you're taking your power back. You're taking your control back in, Kai, 60 seconds.
I don't have a meditation practice. I feel like if you might finally get me there, because it's really where my head was going. Super
simple.
Yeah.
I'll go back to the yes. And super powerful and huge for leaders, because we actually call this conscious leadership and conscious innovation at the same time. It gets you out of clinging to control and security, your defense mechanisms, where you got to rationalize every action and assumption and your fixed opinions, right? Here's another thing it also does. It also relaxes you more, so you're not so much into so much into fatigue. It takes a lot of energy to keep up this unconscious mode, right? To always be right, right? Have that fixed mindset.
Can it be that easy?
Yes.
Somebody's watching this and they're skeptic. You're telling me that to be a better leader or to manage my stressful leaders, I need to breathe, assess where I am, breathe, get my brain under control, and choose a direction.
I'll give you a quote from Viktor Frankl. Everything can taken from a man but one thing, the last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's own way. That's for man's search for meaning. And Carl Jung says, I am not what happened to me, I am what I choose to become. Choice is a human superpower, right? It is part of our intuitiveness. We kind of know we're able to choose, and we really just have to activate it more. But we have to choose, understand that there's subconscious part of us has to be overcome. It's just you talked about software, right? This is just software. This is programming. Your brain is a software program, right? And if you change the software program, then the hardware, just steps into it. Yes, it is that easy. Right?
I love it. It's very intuitive to me, consistent with other training I've had. That's been very empowering. And I do encourage people to tune into this and tune into your program, which we'll be able to plug here in just a second. We'll move in to the us being able to give a shameless plug and offering a listener thank you gift in just a moment. But I want to give you a chance. Is there anything else you want to say to wrap the training portion of this interview up?
Well, I would say that the whole program is it's in 6 parts, and it takes you on a hero's journey. We call this the new hero's journey of answer, because we were talking about what do I do? It is answering a new call, okay? A new call for a new story, right? To not just be in the old story, because as you've seen from that hockey stick, we do need to change models because the old models are crumbling around us. We do need to know what we're doing, and how can we 11x our capabilities. We tell a story in our program. I don't know if you know the movie Spinal Tap, right? But the rock guitarist tells the director that his amps all go to 11, right? And of course, you can only put amps to 10, right? That's the top of sound. He says, no, these go to 11, right? And it's an apt analogy for VUCA, because VUCA is turning our world, which we thought could be at 10 to 11 and to 12. So what we've done is we've looked for programs and for segments in every area. Your story, we have a thing called the VUCA MAX Warrior, which is about anti-fragile resilience. We have creative flow, which goes right into, we didn't get a chance to get into it, which really goes under the hood of creativity. How do you go from that unconscious state? Now, how do we get people to participate more? Because you're talking about remote, it's very different. It's a very new frontier. It's badly understood because, just being a director, okay, and having 100 people underneath me, right, on shoots, and having all kinds of volatility all the time, right, and editors, now working with editors remotely. I mean, there's some editors that they would come in with me and we would work one-on-one with special effects or on an edit. And they were just a little bit more insecure, they were a little bit more introverted, right? An introvert needs a whole different type of empathy, right? They don't perform well in Zooms that well, right? They're more apt to just talk to you on the side. So all of these new tools that we have kind of deal with some of these new permutations of empathy, and how to get creativity out of people. When like I said, when I work on these big shoots and stuff, and you work with actors, a lot of actors are very different. There's a lot of psychology, a lot of different behavior to how everybody acts. And in a VUCA world where you lose a location, in a moment, I don't have props, a vehicle goes down, all of that kind of stuff. I mean, it kind of prepared me a little bit for doing this and why I found this so amazing, this VUCA MAX system. But getting back to our program, we have programs that deal with all of these different new needs, new exponential, empathy, diversity, creativity. And I think that pretty much wraps it up. We do have an upcoming book called VUCA MAX. You can pre-order it on itsvuca.com. It's VUCA, I-T-S V-U-C-A. There's no apostrophe, obviously, with Google.
I'll put those links in the description.
Great.
If people want to connect with you on social media, what's the best way to do that?
Well, we have Instagram, we have Facebook. Just have to Google It's VUCA. Search for It's VUCA. We're on YouTube. We're on Twitter. And this program is for executive leaders. We just had a huge international coaching cohort, people all over the world, Colombia and Switzerland. And for companies, HR people that want to know about it, individuals who want to 11x their potential and their capabilities. It's really a new frontier of coaching and consulting. How do we access these higher faculties and skills? This new vertical learning. And see, there's one other thing with the book. Go ahead.
While you're thinking, I'll do our shameless plug, which is sign up for Maureen Metcalf's Innovative Leadership Program, which we're partnering to offer through the JMU School of Professional and Continuing Education. If you're watching this in October 2022, follow the link. You can maybe still make it to the registration deadline. It starts November 1, but the deadline is about a week ahead of that. And you can get a discount that will be in the description here to that program, saves you over $500. We are also going to launch for the first time a project management basics and team communication course, which is just basics of how do you get things get things coordinated on a team? How do you talk through a flow chart to make sense of all these different things? So look for that link here. You are also offering a listener thank you gift. And if people go to itsvuca.com, you're going to see this window pop up. And this window, am I sharing it?
Yeah, I think I saw it. Yeah, I saw it's good. In fact, that's what I was trying to remember.
Yeah, right. That's what I thought.
Yeah.
So
there you go.
People can have a free coaching call with someone on your team.
Right.
Tell us about that.
Well, it's 15 to 20 minutes. It can go, it's gone as long as an hour if it's a company, but we basically find out what do you need? What's your dream? What is your, and we have 6 key areas that we offer. We have a huge foresight area. We have a huge creativity, exponential empathy, anti-fragile resilience, how to change your story if you're in marketing and you're uncertain about your story in this VUCA MAX world. That's what I've done for 20 years, working with companies changing their story. So you tell us where you are, and we'll tell you what part of the program. All of our coaches say that what's so amazing about our program is that the entire program is amazing, but any individual segment is like incredibly valuable.
I hope people really take advantage of that. So I'll put that link again in there, and that pop-up will give you a chance to request that. And
and the film too. Watch the film.
Watch the film. I was just going to say the film, It's VUCA, is on iTunes, Vimeo, Google Play, Xbox, Prime Video, and Vudu. I don't even know what Vudu
Apple
is.
TV.
Sure. Yeah, Apple TV. And VUDU, voodoo. That's a new one for me.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's great. Last question. Other than
Sure.
you and your own resources,
Sure.
if people want to learn more about everything that's informing your understanding of this, what are some books or some people or some?
Well, everybody that was in the movie. I mean,
Yeah.
Stephen Collar, all his books, Abundance and he did it with Diamantis. And I think also Institute for the Future, which is Bob Johansson, right? We had so many great people. Another person that I'm a big fan of is where I found out about VUCA is David Peterson, who is at, because I did a big Google project, and basically it was a course with UCLA. We did a 12 cohort course with Google and UCLA School of Anderson's School of Business. And a lot of the people there were talking about why Google was so successful was because David Peterson had brought VUCA in to the mix about how you constantly have to embrace change, right? And that's one reason they went from being a search engine to all of a sudden buying YouTube and autonomous cars and all the, the alphabet companies that they have. And this is the way you have to think. So I would say him, and also Mark Devine has a great program. It's great books. See who else we should probably say.
Of course, Nassim Taleb, Anti-Fragility.
Nassim Taleb, Anti-Fragility.
The book. So I'll take that and I'll find those links to those resources and put them in the description. And I appreciate your passion about this. And
it's fun.
Yeah. It seems abstract and big picture, but it also seems intuitive and in some ways a little bit tangible in a way. When I think about how to counter the negative VUCA with, hey, my role as a leader and first of myself, let's tap into vision and all those other positive VUCA pieces.
Yes,
is helpful, and I appreciate all your.
Well, it snaps you out of
a lot of energy dedicated to this.
It snaps you out of, just like I said, this as Pink Floyd said, the comfortably numb stage. Like, oh, I'm just going to let climate change will all work out. No, one of the things we say, and it's probably a good way to wrap up. We say in the movie, in a VUCA world, everybody needs to be a hero. We need all of you. We need everybody. We need everybody to be an innovator, everybody to be a creator, everybody to be a participant. And if I can inspire leaders to get their teams engaged, motivated, and you can too. I love this program. And by the way, we should also just say Maureen's wonderful, and I love what she's doing. And she's a genius in her own right on this stuff. So
we're really excited to partner with her.
Yes.
She connected me to you, and really appreciate your time. And with that, we'll go ahead and say goodbye and thank you to everybody that made it all the way through this interview.
All right. Good enough.